Welcome to the Razors Inc. podcast with your host, Jonathan Farini. In 1988, two Scottish twin brothers wrote a song in just 45 minutes that subsequently went to number one in the UK. But no one on these shores even knew about the song until 5 years later, when it was prominently featured in the romantic comedy starring Johnny Depp, Benny and June. So pour yourself a drink, pull up a chair, and hear Jonathan's take on movies, television, and today. Have you figured out the song? Well, let's just say the title really should be 1,000 Miles. Think about it. Here's your host, Jonathan Farini.
Let me begin with a question. Have you ever loved someone so much that distance stopped being a number? Not miles, not oceans, not years, just an obstacle. Because there's an old idea buried deep in songs and stories that somewhere in the world, someone is walking towards someone else. Let's say a soldier walking home from war, or that sailor counting the weeks until land. My favorite image is a man stepping off a train with a letter folded in his coat pocket, a future story in the making. And the only thing pushing him forward is love. In many of my music podcasts, I reference songs which tap me on the shoulders years later, demanding my attention, and most never caught my attention when they were released. The subject of this podcast is the song I'm Gonna Be 500 Miles by a Scottish band, The Proclaimers, released in 1988 on Chrysalis label.
When I wake up, well, I know I'm gonna be the man who wakes up next to you.
For the record, pun intended, this is distinct from the 1960s folk song of a similar name, popularized by the artist Peter Paul and Mary.
500 miles from my home. 500.
Why is it tapping you on the shoulder, Jonathan? Because I've matured and laid down a lot of ink as a writer and now understand underneath the lyrics lives a vow as old as literature itself.
But I will walk 500 miles and I will walk 500 more.
We're going to follow that road because the idea of a man determined to return to the one he loves might be one of the oldest stories ever told. Let's open with a refrain. If the road runs cold and the night grows wild, I'll follow the lantern another mile. Through broken towns and the rivers wide, love waits somewhere on the other side. Remember this refrain because you're in for a surprise at the end of the podcast. Modern folk music understands this feeling well. Listen to the storytelling in bands like the Lumineers.
I don't think you're right for him. Think of what it might have been. Took a bus to Chinatown. I'd be standing on Canal and Bowery. She'd be standing next to me. I belong to you. You belong to me. You're my sweetheart. I belong to you. You belong to me. You're my sweetheart.
You're my sweetheart. I belong with you. You belong with me. You're my sweetheart. These songs often feel like letters written on the road, to me anyways. Men wandering through small towns or dusty highways, winter streets, trying to get back to someone who matters. They're not heroes, they're just travelers. And that's what makes these songs linger after they end. They don't sound like grand operas or epic symphonies. You know, they sound like a voice beside a campfire or a man walking down a dark road quietly telling himself why he has to keep going. Because somewhere ahead of him, a light is still on. But this story didn't begin with modern music. It goes back centuries. In Homer's ancient epic, the Odyssey, Odysseus spends 10 years trying to return home to Penelope. Through storms, wars, shipwrecks, every obstacle imaginable. Yet the story's not really about monsters or gods. It's about a man trying to get home. The same longing appears in poetry. Robert Burns wrote of love enduring distance and hardship. Walt Whitman wrote of men crossing vast landscapes, searching for meaning and connection. Across languages and centuries, the theme repeats: a road, a memory, and someone waiting. And sometimes this isn't just poetry, sometimes it's actually history. During the final chaotic months after World War II, there was a Hungarian soldier named Andras Toma. He was captured by the Soviets. He was transported thousands of miles away. For decades, he lived in a psychiatric hospital in Russia because no one could understand his language. Finally, in the year 2000, doctors realized he was Hungarian. And at the age of 75, after 53 years away, he was returned home to Hungary. Imagine that moment for a second. A man stepping out into the air of the country he left half a century earlier. The language suddenly familiar again. The trees the same shape he remembered as a young man. The sound of voices that finally understood him. He'd been gone half a century. But when he arrived, there were still distant relatives waiting. Sometimes the road really is that long. Cinema understands this too. Think about the quiet determination of men crossing countries and continents in films like Cold Mountain,
They kept trying to put me in the ground.
They never killed me.
You are all that keeps me from sliding into some dark place.
which is a 2003 epic period war drama written and directed by Anthony Minghella, or The Wandering Loneliness of Paris, Texas, a 1984 Western drama road film directed by Wim Wenders.
I knew these people. They were in love with each other.
Tell me what happened with you and Jane.
I gotta go away now,
Why?
because I'm gonna find her.
No, come on, let's go.
Co-written by Sam Shepard and L.M. Kit Carson. The camera lingers on highways. There's dust, there's footsteps, because every step is part of the same promise. The truth is, men have always sung about this. From sea shanties to folk ballads to even modern indie music, because love transforms distance. Miles become a test of love's resolve, and every mile walked is a declaration of forever love. Which brings me back to that simple line written by the Proclaimers tapping me on the shoulder after 28 years. 500 miles. I ask, why 500? Not 600, not 1,000. The point is, it doesn't matter. Today, how many would walk 50 miles? How many miles would you walk? Not because the distance is practical or necessary, but because the promise is absolute in its determination and imagery. We have thousands of songs about men crossing mountains and oceans for love. But what about women? Where are their versions of this journey? They exist in novels and letters and songs where women refuse to wait quietly. Women who leave, women who travel, who search, who cross their own 500 miles. But perhaps those stories deserve an episode of their own. So I'll ask the women listening, what are your songs of the long road? Your poems of distance, your stories of love that demanded a journey, because somewhere out there, there's another road waiting to be explored. And maybe that's why these songs endure, because every listener at some point in life becomes the traveler, walking towards someone or waiting for someone, or remembering the road they once took for love. Let's return to that refrain at the opening of the podcast. If the road runs cold and the night grows wild, I'll follow the lantern another mile. Through broken towns and the rivers wide, love waits somewhere on the other side. So, who is the mystery poet? The poem was featured on social media platforms in September 2025, identifying the legendary martial artist and actor Bruce Lee as the author. Bruce wrote more poetry and deserves a read. You know, I see poetry in his movement. I always did. It makes sense. He's a poet. And if the song is right, someone is already walking 500 miles and 500 more just to fall down at your door. Until I see you next time, please leave behind a soft footprint. And for the record, I prefer a short, leisurely walk along the beach. So expect a delivery from me. Class is dismissed.
Now, in 1705, Dietrich Buxtehude was giving an organ concert. Never heard of Dietrich Buxtehude? Well, you may have heard of a then 20-year-old Johann Sebastian Bach, who, according to legend, walked 250 miles just to hear that concert. And while not 500 or 1,000 miles, Bach got to spend the next 4 months studying with Buxtehude. You see, effort matters. You've been listening to the Razors Inc. podcast with Jonathan Farini. Be sure to check out Jonathan's collection of fiction at jonathanfarini.com. Also, look for Jonathan's latest short story, Two Black Dresses, a touching story that reminds us of big impact from seemingly small acts. Two Black Dresses, already published in the latest edition of Borderless. It's been published again in the latest edition of Egophobia magazine. Go to egophobia.ro or find it at jonathanfarini.com. You can also drop an email anytime to razorsincpodcast@gmail.com.